Welcome to another episode of This Is Why I Don't Vote, a podcast. Season 5, Episode 16. Your safe space to discuss sports, politics, social issues, and even religion, where we will take it all very seriously, but not too seriously. The return of Two Idiots Discuss Sports, the NHL Playoff Preview Edition. The 2025 playoffs are set. The matchups begin today. Yes, I am editing well into Saturday, April 19th. My buddy John comes on the podcast. We're going to talk about the first and second rounds of both the Eastern and Western Conference playoffs. Thank you all to my loyal listeners. If you're new to the podcast, please like, subscribe, thumbs up, 5-star, write a review, send to friends and enemies far and wide. If you like what you hear, and you appreciate the fact that there are no commercials on this podcast, This Is Why I Don't Vote podcast is on Patreon. Please consider supporting.
Act 1, Two Idiots Discuss Sports, 2025 NHL Playoff Preview.
Back by popular demand, I've got John here on the podcast, Two Idiots Discuss Sports, an NHL Playoff Preview. We have all of our matchups set for the playoffs that start tomorrow, this being recorded on Friday, April 18th. John, say hello to the people.
What's up, people? How's everyone doing out there?
I hear that your back has been giving you problems, and you are exhibiting the signs of being an old man.
Well, funny enough, I did have a bad car accident a few years ago, as you know, and I was actually, embarrassingly, I was in the gym getting ready to work out, and I sneezed and hit the deck. Couldn't move. I had some people, luckily my girlfriend was there working out too. Some people helped me outside from the gym, barely could get in the car. It took me 30 minutes to get from the car into a wheelchair, into the ER, and they shot me up with a bunch of stuff, and I had to go to a ortho guy today and have to go in another week. So you are right. Maybe I am getting old, or I need to brace myself better for the sneezes. But
it's one hell of a sneeze, man.
Is what it is, right?
That's right. Well, look, I did want, of course, to touch on the Stanley Cup playoffs, but you and I exchanged some text when it happened, and we wanted to save it for the podcast. Alexander Ovechkin breaking Wayne Gretzky's goal record, which, of course, when you and I were in college, no one thought that was one of those unimpeachable or unassailable records. No one's going to break this record. And here we now, 25, 30 years later, see a guy who, one of the most lethal goal scorers we've seen in NHL history. That's more a testament, that record's more a testament to longevity than it is just a great goal scorer, because there's been a lot of great goal scorers in the league, right?
Yeah, there has, and we might not see it again in our lifetimes. Now, you'd have to look at the total goals, though, which they don't include in the playoffs. I'm sure Gretzky's probably got way more. But, this is something, first of all, that should have happened earlier in the season, but Ovechkin broke his leg. So we knew it was going to happen. I was actually over at a friend's house, a bunch of us guys there, and I said the first power play the Caps get, he's going to get it. And lo and behold, the first power play, he got it. So it was a really neat goal. One of the guys there is actually getting a tattoo on his leg of him, of the record-breaking goal, because he's a big Caps fan. But yeah, it was neat. I thought it was really cool.
So that's interesting you brought this up. He broke his leg. He would have broken that record in less games had he not broken his leg, right?
Well, they go game by game. He just potentially, but I mean, he just would have gotten it months ago. But now the big thing, if you really want to look at it, and hopefully he would, I don't know if he could get it or not, because he only wants to play one more year in the league. I guess he would get it, because he's going to get 1,000, and then he'll go back and play in Russia for a year or two, is what he said he wanted to do. So,
yeah, I guess what I meant was, if he hadn't broke his leg, it takes a while to come back, and I know that he, of course, rehabbed, the modern technology, the facilities they have today, the treatments they have today. But he's an older guy.
Yeah.
He was on a pretty good streak. He breaks his leg. You come back and you don't know if you're going to be the same player. And hockey being one of those sports where as much as you think it might be hand-eye coordination and his hands in general, you need those legs to be churning, man. You got to be in the right place at the right time in order to score all those goals.
Yeah, that's been the knock on him for a while too. But I think what's more impressive is his number of goals and his number of hits. He's one of the heaviest hitting players of all time, and a lot of people say had he just not done that as much, he would have scored more goals. But kind of cool that he did both, and kind of cool that it's all with one team, right?
Exactly. That he's one of those guys, because the NHL in particular is a league where guys bounce around, and not, journeyman guys, not some of these more middle of the pack players. I mean, stars have jumped from team to team to team. It's rare that you have a guy that is going to play for one team his entire career. The one that comes to mind, of course, that I love is Steve Yzerman, the captain. He played for the Red Wings his entire career. There's not a lot of guys who played as long as Ovechkin did that could say, I played for the same team my entire career.
Yeah, now even Gretzky and Messier played for multiple teams. I mean, there's, it looks like Crosby and Malkin might do it, but it's Bobby Orr did it. There's a handful of guys that did it more from back in the day, but it's kind of a rarity nowadays.
That it is. I'm glad we got to talk about that. I know, of course, that one of the guys that does the podcast, the 4 Idiots or 2 Idiots, if we're doing basketball, my buddy Jason, he lives in that area. He's a Caps fan. I know he was excited about that. You being in Richmond, there being a ton of Caps fans in that area, I'm sure everyone in that area was excited about it. It is an iconic record. And you're right. I think he's going to hit 1,000. So he's not only going to break a major record, he's going to put it in a different stratosphere where I think you're right. Nobody in our lifetime is going to come close to it. And then he'll go and play in Russia for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I think the only one that could have come close if just, didn't have so many injuries would be like an Austin Matthews, but saying he's just been banged up too much, and we'd have to play a really long time. I mean, I don't think a lot of these guys are going to end up playing as long as they used to. They're getting paid too much for starters now, so they don't really need to anymore.
Right. Well, here we are, round 1 of the Eastern Finals, or the Eastern Finals, the playoffs, and here we are at the top of the bracket. We've got Toronto and Ottawa, which is an interesting matchup because Ottawa's been terrible for so long. It's nice to see them make the playoffs, yes?
Yeah, but look what happens when you get Boston's number 1 goalie, when they just trade him away. Magically, you become a great team. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, it's funny how that works out.
There's going to be a lot of Bruins humor in this, okay? But this is the War of Ontario. This is huge. A lot of Canadian teams in this playoffs. A lot of Canadian teams have not made the playoffs. And I don't think they've won a Stanley Cup there in over 30 years.
Correct.
33 years maybe. But this is the War of Ontario. This is not going to be easy. I still think Toronto can eke this one out in 6 or 7 games. But Toronto has not beaten Ottawa this year. They've not won a single game against them. But in the end, I think Toronto has the firepower and the players. Of course, Ottawa has an unbelievable goalie that used to play for the Bruins. Solid defense. I think Toronto's going to need a little help on special teams to really make this swift. Otherwise, it's going to be a big problem and a big dogfight.
Well, here's what I love about all of these matchups. I can't remember, and of course, I'm old, my memory is terrible. It's been a while since I've looked up and down the matchups, and there isn't a series.
The parity is scaring me.
Yes, parity, all these teams are good. The matchups are great based on the way the teams play, and you look at the history of Toronto over the course of the last 6 or 7 years, this Austin Matthews-led youth movement that this team just can't seem to get over the hump, and I don't like this matchup for them. I think it's a bad matchup, and I think you've got a bunch of guys on that team that are in their head about how far they can advance and whether or not they may be the catalyst by not winning of this team being broken up. I can see if Toronto loses this series, let's say 4-1, that this team gets broken up. Now, I'm not saying that's what the series is going to be, but if they don't have a good showing against this Ottawa team, an Ottawa team that's been, again, can't stress this enough, bad, This is a bad team. They've been a bad team for a long time. They made some key moves, namely, like you said, they go out and get a top-tier goalie. Their defense is much better. Toronto on the cusp, the precipice of being great for all these years, and then they lose in the first round to, like you said, the Battle of the Battle of Ontario, to a team that's been in the cellar for so long. I just don't like the matchup. I'm going with Ottawa.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I think, like I said, if Toronto does not get special teams opportunities, it won't. But the old saying is defense and goaltending wins Stanley Cups, and I give Ottawa the slight nod. But if they do take stupid penalties and stuff like that, if the Senators do that, then I think Toronto would win. But I think it's going to be closer than people think. I think it's going to be pretty far down to the wire.
I agree with this.
They've got to. The Bruins aren't there who traditionally beat Toronto in the playoffs. They're out of it. But there is an old Bruins goalie in there. So, maybe see if that magic rubs off a little bit. So
Tampa Bay, Florida, again, another regional rivalry, right? The Battle of Florida. Both of these teams familiar with one another, not only in the regular season, but of course in the playoffs as well. They've met one another over the course of the last 5 or 6 seasons in these playoff series. Who you got?
Well, at the very start, months ago, I said Florida was going to make the Stanley Cup Finals again. I don't know if that's true. They haven't played great down the stretch. They're pretty much 500, but Kachuk's not playing. Marchand's a little dinged. They've a few injuries there, but I think they know what they're doing. It's definitely the War of the East and the Sunshine State. This is another hard one. Everyone's going to go all out on this. It's a toss-up series in my mind, but I think Florida is just a little bit deeper through all their lines, defensively and offensively. They have a great power play when they can do it. They're really good at defense. They give up some of the fewest shots in the league, so they're kind of stingy. You got 2 solid goalies, but one of them's got to play well, and I think it's going to be a huge grind. I definitely think this is a 7-gamer. I'd be shocked if it wasn't. And I think it's going to be a very hard-hitting, rough and tough series all the way around.
Who you got?
Yeah, so I think Florida ekes it out, but I think it's not going to be easy to do so.
I'm going with Tampa Bay, and I'm going with Tampa Bay only because I feel like Florida is limping into these playoffs, not playing their best hockey. And the NHL is one of the weirdest sports that there are those teams that instead of building the momentum in the last 10, 15 games of the regular season and then carrying that into the playoffs, you get these teams that they catch fire in the playoffs. Florida is certainly one of the teams that could do that because of their experience and their depth. Like you said, they're probably deeper throughout the course of all 4 of their lines than Tampa Bay is, but they haven't been playing well leading up into this series, and Tampa Bay has. I feel like Tampa Bay's got the edge here, and I think you're right. I think it's going to be a 6 or a 7-game series, but I'm going to give the edge to Tampa Bay only because I feel like they're playing better hockey coming into this series.
Okay, and they, don't forget, Florida gets Aaron Ekblad back, who was suspended, and Kachuk will be back for this too. I don't know how long it'll last. We've talked about that before. Groin injuries are tough. Same thing, if Tampa takes – there's going to be a lot of penalties in this, but if they take them against Florida, they're in big trouble. You got Marchand, Kachuk, and Bennett on a power play. That's just scary right there. Along with their next – they just have waves of good players. They're very experienced coach, very experienced team. They know how to turn it on and off. I mean, I think they're going to come out a different team, but we will see.
All right, Washington and Montreal. This is an interesting series as well. The Red Wings, leading up to the end of the season, they had a key game. I think that their chances, if they beat Montreal, I think it was the 3rd to last game of the season, they still had like a 27 or 28% chance of making the playoffs. Montreal, just kicks their ass. Once again, the Red Wings are knocked out of playoff contention with less than 5 games left, 2 seasons in a row. Montreal comes in. They are playing pretty well. Do you think they have a chance, though, against what is a Washington team that has looked great all season?
I think the only thing the Canadians are going to win is the loudest stadium in the playoffs this year. The place is going to be absolutely boisterous, rocking, crazy. I give the Canadians one win in this series. I say the Caps win 4-1.
I agree with you. I think that Montreal will win one of the games in Montreal only because the team will be energized by that crowd, which is, again, one of the most unique places in North American sport. But Washington's too good. 4-1, Washington. Here's an interesting series because this is another team that hasn't, of course, when you and I were much younger men and could actually drink more than 4 drinks in one night and not be hungover for the next 96 hours, New Jersey was a power. New Jersey, Carolina, Jersey making their resurgence this season. They're back in the playoffs against a Carolina team that you and I both like, that has had a lot of success. That was a great series against Florida last year. Who do you like in this one?
That they tied in the series this year, but the edge definitely goes to Carolina. Better defense, pretty strong roster, strong team top to bottom, good coaching, just a solid team, not flashy on offense, but they allow the fewest shots in the league. So I think, their offense isn't overwhelming, but I think it's going to be enough to win in 6 games. I don't think this will be, if you're looking for exciting games, I really don't think this is going to be that exciting of a series, especially compared to some of the other ones. But I do give the Hurricanes the nod for that defense and just more experience as a team.
You took the words out of my mouth. As much as I'd like to see New Jersey, who hasn't been in the playoffs in a while, do well, they're going up against a very experienced Carolina team, and a Carolina team that probably still feels like they've got Stanley Cup aspirations. I don't like the matchup particularly for New Jersey, so I'm going with Carolina. And we said that we were going to do the second round. So for you, that's going to be Toronto versus Florida, which is, if that's the matchup, that is a hell of a matchup in the second round.
That is a grinder. That is an unbelievable matchup. Florida's 3-1 versus the Leafs this year. I still give the nod for some reason to the Panthers, but only if Bobrovsky, the goalie for Florida, is playing well. If he's not playing well, I don't think Florida's going to last long in the playoffs at all. I think he has to play well. But again, Tkachuk coming back, Aaron Ekblad, one of the best players in the league, 2A's, Sasha Barkov. Maybe Marchand can turn it on when Tkachuk gets back. Again, I think this team is going to draw penalties, and if they do, they're going to make Toronto pay big time. But this will be a good series to watch. This will be a rough, rugged, and fast and fun series to watch. I would love to see this.
So because we made different choices, I've got Ottawa and Tampa Bay, and frankly, I think Ottawa is outmatched if they face either Tampa Bay or Florida. The winner of Tampa Bay, Florida, if my prediction is right and Ottawa does bounce Toronto in the first round, I think either one of those teams is going to beat Ottawa, only because Ottawa, although they do have that goalie that has playoff experience, they don't have a lot of other players that you could look to say these are leaders. Granted, they do have a good defense, and I probably shouldn't discount any team that can play good defense in the playoffs, because like you said, defense wins championships in the NHL. I just like Tampa Bay in a matchup with Ottawa. So I'm going to pick Tampa Bay. And then we have Washington versus Carolina, which is another banger. I think that is going to be the matchup. I think both you and I are confident that's going to be the matchup. Who do you have between Washington and Carolina?
They tied this year. The Hurricanes step it up against them. I think the power play for the Capitals is going to be crucial in this one, but I still give the edge to the Capitals. A lot of firepower there. The goalie's playing awesome. The starting goalie for the Caps does have an upper body injury of some kind, but I think he'll be good to go. They're probably just sitting him just to be safe. Hopefully that is. I hate to see anybody hurt, especially with the season the Caps have had. I don't think Ovechkin is going to be some massive factor like everybody thinks, scoring goals. And a lot of playoffs, he does not score goals if you go back and look at all. So they can't just rely on him. I don't think it's going to be all that in these multiple series, but I definitely give the edge to the Caps in this one.
I do too. I like the Caps. I actually like Ovechkin based on the fact that he broke this record. I think that he's going to have a playoff series that is both going to combine, like you said, the fact that as someone with his type of hand-eye coordination, his hands, his speed, yeah, he's going to be out there hitting, but I have this feeling that he's going to put up some numbers when it comes to offense, whether that be goals and assists or just goals. So I definitely like Washington in this one, and that would leave us with a conference final that we can discuss in a later podcast. So that we don't lose time and lose focus, let's head over to the West in an interesting series because I really didn't see this coming. We've got Winnipeg and St. Louis.
Certainly Winnipeg. The Blues have been red hot in the second half. They're 19-4-3 in the second half of the season. Obviously, they got the Boston Bruins coach earlier this year, Jim Montgomery, and that's worked a lot. But, Winnipeg was the best team in the league, and they have the Vezina Trophy winner. They've been really bad in the playoffs the past few years, and they have a new coach this year too. So that's a little nerve-wracking, but I think they got the firepower to get it done.
What's interesting about this matchup for me, the last time St. Louis won the Stanley Cup, they were one of the worst teams of the league at the All-Star break. They were the best team in the league the second half of the season, and that carried them in, and they ended up beating the Boston Bruins in the Stanley Cup final. Here we have a very similar St. Louis team. It's like they just recycled that model. They were excellent after the All-Star break, and here we have a Winnipeg team that, although they are the best team in the league by way of record, as you said, the last, 3 or 4 years they've been in the playoffs, very disappointing outcomes. I think that that's going to be in their head. So I guess I'm curious to see whether or not Winnipeg, similar to the Detroit Red Wings, of course I'm always going to go back to the Red Wings, but back in the early 90s when the Red Wings were emerging and they had several disappointing playoff exits as a top tier or a top seeded team, I'm just wondering whether or not that is helping shape their psyche so that they're stronger, they're going to be tougher, or if this is just a fragile team like some of those San Jose teams have been over the course of the last 20, 30 years. I'm going with St. Louis, man. I just feel like they've got so much momentum coming into this series. And again, I don't want to say that a team can't get hot in the playoffs, but this is one of the hottest teams in the league coming into the playoffs. So it's a bad matchup for Winnipeg all around.
Yeah, if Hellebuyck plays like he did in the Four Nations, I think they'll be fine. Winnipeg has just waves of talent. Waves. Yes. It just doesn't stop. Like there's hardly a weakness on that team. So they've just got to play like they did this year. Let's see if they can do it. I mean, they had the most points in the league this year. They were way up there last year. It didn't work. So maybe with this new coach, it'll change things.
It's a good point. And Montgomery's had success. It's not like he was terrible in Boston, and that's why they fired him. So, maybe a new vision that's going to get them over the hump. 1998, 1999, revisited. We've got Dallas and Colorado. This is going to be a good series. This is the War
of the West.
Yes.
This is going to be I don't know if it's going to be a bloodbath. Get your first form energy drinks and stay up late for these games because these are probably going to be some of the best games right here of the entire playoffs. I think this will be an absolute war down at the end. I give a very slight edge to Dallas, but it could go either way. It could certainly be either team when we talked about parity. Dallas has a lot to prove. They should have made the Cup last year. They got a stacked farm system, but they really need to excel and execute big time. It's time. You know what I mean? They've had a good team for years. I don't know what's keeping them from making it over the hump, but they also have Mikko Rantanen that they got this year, so that could be the X factor. And their coach is actually 8-0 in Game 7s in his career. And I think it's going to go down to Game 7, but I think these are going to be tight games. You're going to have overtime games. I think these two teams are really going to wear themselves down forever they play in the second series.
What's interesting about this series to me is you've got two teams that, for lack of a better term, have shit the bed over the course of the last two seasons in the playoffs. It's hard to remember that Colorado won the Stanley Cup not 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Stanley Cup winning team, and it's like they never built on that momentum. It's a lot. I mean, the core of that team is the same, and yet they've had disappointing playoff series over the course of the last couple of years. Like you said, Dallas should have probably been in the Stanley Cup. So you've got two teams that feel like they're better than their playoff record shows, and yet they're facing each other in the first round. Psychologically, I don't know that there's anyone or either team that I can give an edge to, because I feel like they're both facing the same thing. Now, Dallas having a new coach, again, new coach, new vision, new voice in your ear, this may carry them over the hump. I don't know. I mean, this is truly a coin flip to me. If I'm going to pick either team, from a success standpoint, Colorado did win the Stanley Cup. And again, I think the core, the nucleus of this team is the same. And Dallas, the big thing about Dallas, and I hate that I'm blanking on the guy's name, their goalie is great when he's great. And he is not great when he's not great. And it's amazing to me that in those close games, he seems to give up those goals that you just kind of shake your head at. It's like, I don't know that was so hard to save that he couldn't have made it. And I feel like that's going to be the difference, that they're not going to have the kind of closeout goalie that they need in a series that's going to be this tight. So I'm going to go with Colorado.
Okay, you're talking about Jake Ottinger, correct?
Correct.
The goalie, yeah. Yeah, I mean, he was not great last year.
Yeah, so we'll see. So the next series, the Vegas Golden Knights versus, hey, look who made the playoffs this year in the West. The Minnesota Wild. Haven't seen them in the playoffs for a while. Vegas, they've got a really good nucleus. They've got some veteran players. They've got some young players. They had a lot of success in the playoffs over the course of the last 2 to 3 seasons. They end up winning a Stanley Cup. I don't know that Minnesota has the experience or the firepower that they're going to be able to get past the Golden Knights in this series, but maybe you've got a different opinion. Tell me why I might be wrong.
Vegas beat them every matchup this year when they played. I don't predict it. I don't see this one. I say 5 or 6 games. I think Vegas knows exactly what to do. Not many weaknesses on that team. Goalie's playing great. Aiden Hill, I think is his name, but he's stepped up and played over 50 games this year. They were worried about him being a starter. If they just play their way, like when they won the Cup a couple of years back, Vegas, they shouldn't have any problem whatsoever.
Agreed.
I don't think it'll be that close.
I don't either. I think this is like the Carolina-New Jersey series. I'm sorry, the Washington-Montreal series. Maybe it'll go 6 games, but I'm 4-1, if not a sweep. And I don't want to belabor that point. Here's one of the series. This is one of the other series I'm actually really looking forward to. I watched this game. This was last Monday. The Los Angeles Kings versus the Edmonton Los Angeles Kings. I'll spit it out. Versus the Edmonton Oilers. And it was in Edmonton. So I was thinking, this is a possible playoff matchup. Let's see how it plays out. And the Kings smoked them. I stopped watching. It was 4-0 in the second period. I stopped watching it. This is a very interesting matchup. I feel like I'm looking at the same team, and Edmonton having all that playoff success over the course of the last few seasons. The Kings look very similar to this Edmonton team. They play very similar. They know one another because they played each other so often. Who do you got?
All right, this is the second first-round war. Again, some of these first round series may be better than the next rounds, believe it or not, I think. So this will be an absolute war as well. I'm going to go with the Kings because they have the second best defense in the league. The Oilers are 16th in defense in the league. Obviously, the big guns Oilers have, Draisaitl, McDavid, we know that. The goalies are going to have to be superb. I definitely think this is going to be a 7-game thing. Either record the games or drink your energy drinks and stay up late because all their games are going to be late unless they get like a national televised one on a weekend. I see it going 7 games definitely and being very tight and definitely some overtime games in this one too.
And you've got the Kings?
I got the Kings, not by a lot, but mainly because their defenseman, Matthias Ekblom, he'll be back, and their team D is awesome. So I just give the nod to them for that.
I do too. I like this whole offense versus defense matchup, but having watched the Kings a couple of times, just being on the West Coast and seeing them on TV, it's not like their offense sucks. They're not the Montreal Canadiens of 1993. This is a very capable team. I agree with you as well that very likely going 7 games, which is going to make it even more exciting. So that's definitely, thankfully, again, being out here in the West, it's not that onerous for me to watch these games. In fact, it's a lot easier because they're going to start at like 7 o'clock, and many of the East Coast games, I'm probably going to be able to catch the third period. So I am excited about that series as well. Dallas, Colorado, and Los Angeles, Edmonton are going to be, I think, 2 of the more fun series to watch. Based on these picks now, that would leave us, I believe you picked Winnipeg over St. Louis and Dallas over Colorado. So you've got Winnipeg, Dallas in the second round, which would be a pretty interesting matchup as well. Winnipeg, again, it's similar to Dallas and Colorado. You've got a Winnipeg team that's been disappointing in the playoffs, and you've got a Dallas team that thinks that they should have been in the Stanley Cup last year.
Yeah, it's funny. I think the better games are actually going to be these Western games, and it's a shame we don't get to see them because they're on so late. I'm going to give Winnipeg the nod in this one, but I think this is going to be really hard for them again because of the experience. But if the goalie plays like he should for Winnipeg, I think they'll be fine. I think they might be a little more rested. Their team D and goalie is definitely the difference. Every line on offense is solid. But again, they've lost in the first round, 3 seasons in a row?
Yes.
So it's on Hellebuyck to play like the Vezina Trophy winner that he is. I think a lot of it, unfortunately, comes down to him. So let's see if the team can take some of that pressure off. But I think you're going to have some high-scoring affairs here. Very fast, solid play, hard hitting. I see this one going the distance probably, though.
After 7 games, who do you got?
I think I got Winnipeg.
Oh.
It's crazy as it sounds. I think I do, but it's going to be tough.
Well, my, of course, picks are completely opposite. I've got St. Louis and Colorado, and I'll just come right out and say it. If it's St. Louis versus Colorado, I want to believe in Colorado, but psychologically, again, after winning the Stanley Cup, they just haven't had that intestinal fortitude. They haven't been able to put their foot down, and they've had these lapses in the playoffs where they were the better team and they didn't win the series. And I don't think this is a St. Louis team that you want to play that game with. You can't play down. You can't have, a bad period, a bad game. This team right now is hot. I think they've got not only the talent, but they've got the psychological edge. They're one of the best teams in the league over the course of the second half of the season. So I'm going with St. Louis over Colorado, which leaves us with the Vegas Golden Knights, and we both picked the Kings, so we're both on the same wavelength there. That would be a very interesting matchup. The Kings and their defense versus the Knights and their experience and depth. Who do you got?
Another tough, tight series. but I'm going to go slightly with Vegas. They just know how to win. These are going to be, again, expect some overtime games, I think. The Kings were actually 3-1 versus Vegas this year, but both teams have a lot of experience. They're both solid from top to bottom. I'm just giving a very slight edge to the Knights, and not by much, just because of that experience. This one's honestly too tough for me to call, but the LA goalie's been great this year, but he was never a starter until this year. I want to see what happens when he's playing potentially more and more games back-to-back in previous series. And that's why I give the nod to the Kings. It's more of a, to the Knights, because I think it's just more of a structured, experienced team atmosphere, just a little bit more edge than the Kings. But hey, the Kings did beat them a lot this year, so I think it's going to be tight and tough, and I think this one should probably go the distance too, or close to it.
I have the Kings putting up a valiant effort because they are a great team, but it's the same. I have the same. If I have to put both of these teams on a scale, what's going to tip the scale in favor of the Golden Knights? It's going to be their experience, the fact that they've been there and they've won a Stanley Cup. It's hard to argue with the resume when you've got teams that are so closely matched, but I think it is going to go 7 games. And I think it's going to be a great 7-game series. I think it's going to be... We had last year several of those series, including the Stanley Cup, where it was one team beating the crap out of the other, and the only drama was the fact that the series was tied, but the games weren't that competitive. I think in this Stanley Cup playoff series, probably all of them. I mean, I think there are a number of series where I don't think we're going to see so many lopsided victories where the only drama is who's up in the series, or if it's tied, who do we think is going to win the next game? I want to see close games, and I think this is going to be a close series, but I have to give the edge to the Golden Knights. As we discussed, we're not going to go all the way through the Stanley Cup playoffs into the finals. We're going to save the conference finals for another podcast. I wanted to give you a little runway because I don't want to spend too much time on it, but talk about the Boston Red Sox, talk about what they're doing right now. How disappointed or how pleased are you a mere 20 games into the season?
Right at 500, right?
Yep.
About what I expected. Actually, if anyone wants to go see the Netflix series about the Red Sox, it's actually pretty good. But it basically proves the point that they're just not going to spend money like Houston did before, and like the Dodgers do, and the Yankees have. They're just not going to do it anymore. So I don't know if that really works for baseball. I think you kind of have to win by doing what the Dodgers do. I hate to say that, but I just look at that lineup and good young players, solid, but anything extravagant that could, get to the playoffs, I'm not sure. I'm not so sure about that.
Well, that's why I framed it the way that I did. When you're 500, only, 18, 20 games into the season, glass half full, glass half empty, it's too early to make any kind of real assessment on these teams. For me, one of the things that stands out about the Mets, I did the podcast with my buddy Brian. We do the preview every year, and my concern was, of course, the Mets starting pitching. And right now, again, an extremely small sample size, but the Mets lead the league in starting ERA. I would never have guessed that based on who they have as starting pitchers, that through 20 games, the Mets would lead the league in starting ERA, and that's the reason why they are a 12-6 or a 12-7 baseball team right now. So that makes me happy. We'll see whether or not you and I, in maybe 2 or 3 weeks, if we're doing a conference final preview, whether or not I can take a victory lap on that. We'll see if they can maintain that ERA, but it's better to start that way than not start that, not have that starting pitching mesh at all.
Yeah, just keep in mind, though, the weather's not been great up in the Northeast so far this year. It was actually snowing for one of the Detroit games and one of the Boston games. So when things warm up, that changes a lot. But the real answer I was supposed to give you when you ask how are the Red Sox doing or how are the Bruins, whatever, a real Boston guy would say go Celtics.
That's true. That's true. And like I said to you last year, and I'll say it right now, we're not gonna do an NBA breakdown. I'll break it down like this. I think the Celtics are gonna win again. So, take that for what it's worth.
Don't curse it.
But I look at the East. I think there are teams in the East that can challenge the Celtics. I'm not saying that it's going to be a cakewalk. But when I look at the West, a lot of the teams that are playing very well in the West, they're young. They don't have a lot of playoff experience, and there is something to be said for the youth movement in the NBA and the fact that most of the teams out West that are very successful are young. But young rarely wins in crunch time in the playoffs, and we're talking about a Celtics team that failed when they were young in the playoffs and have those battle scars, and that's one of the reasons why I think they are the team to beat in this 2025 playoff series. So,
yep.
Go
but
Celtics,
remember,
man.
like I said last year, the key to the whole thing is Porzingis' health. If he's healthy, that's the stick of dynamite for the Celtics.
The 21st century Bill Walton.
Yep.
All right, buddy. Well, I appreciate you coming on and doing the podcast. As always, thank you for your insight. You always bring a lot of knowledge and research into the playoff predictions, and I do appreciate that. And I hope you feel better. I hope you get that back in order.
All right, sounds good. We'll talk in a couple weeks.
Act 2, Epilogue.
I have a piece on Nico Iamaleava leaving the University of Tennessee, going into the transfer portal, ostensibly for more money. Everything that I've read about this quote-unquote contract dispute is that he wanted more money after signing a contract for the duration of the time that he was at Tennessee. The drama amounts to no more than a player who had a contract, didn't like it, wanted more money, and decided to hold out, and when it didn't work, he decided to leave. The podcast is already over 40 minutes, so I'm not going to tack it on because really I don't want to edit it all down after I just spent all this time editing the Two Idiots segment. So that's something that you can look forward to next week. This is Why I Don't Vote, a podcast.